The week's end top stories at NBR, a new investment model for backing Kiwi businesses, the resurgence support payment, legal issues surrounding unvaxxed workers, and there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR This Week. We start with a wrap of the end of the week's top business stories in the second week of September. From the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. Then we'll look back at the top NBR Today stories for the past week. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks again for joining us. Business Syndications Limited, BSL, is offering a new investment model for backing Kiwi businesses that involves providing a deal-by-deal unitised investment platform. BSL is the brainchild of former Rangatira Investments Chief Executive Phil Veal, Chris Small and Stephen Smith from ABC Business Sales, and former ASB General Manager of Corporate Banking, Henry Withers. Phil Veal is BSL Managing Director and Chair of Expatriate Network Kia. He joined NBR co-editor Fiona Rotherham.
Well, a limited partnership is not as liquid as an investment, say, on the NZX, but we have unitised those partnership investments so that an investor can sell that unit to another investor if he or she wants. And we've also said to our investors, we've helped them set up accounts on the Syndex platform at the moment, which is a syndicated investment platform that lists my farm investments, property farm, rural investments, and so investors can trade their units there if they want to.
BSL Managing Director Phil Veal with Fiona Rotherham there. A bankrupt property developer charged in an assault case involving a champagne flute is also battling the liquidators of a failed hotel project and refusing to hand over documents. Andrew Montgomery denies wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm in an incident at a party at a luxury Westmere home in April. Suppression of Montgomery's name lapsed this week. His home in Moko Street, Ponsonby, was taken to mortgagee sale in May this year by FE Investments receivers. In June, the buyer of the $2.5 million house was left with a huge repair bill after the property was stripped of its fixtures and vandalised just before settlement. Businesses struggling with the ongoing lockdown in Auckland and the tougher restrictions under the new Alert Level 2 can again apply for the resurgence support payment, which is worth up to a maximum of $21,500. Finance Minister Grant Robertson announced today it would open to a second round of applications next Friday.
This is a new payment, as the resurgence support payment was originally seen as a one-off initiative. But it is clear that as heightened alert level restrictions are in place for longer, it does put more pressure on businesses. Applications for this new round will begin next Friday, the 17th, and will be available until 1 month after a nationwide return to Alert Level 1, just as for the first payment.
Finance Minister Grant Robertson. Meanwhile, the confirmation that RSE workers will be able to bypass quarantine and return to New Zealand orchards and fields come October has been welcomed by fruit growers, who say, however, they're still facing steep labour shortages as buds start to bloom. Here's NZ Apple and Pears Chief Executive Alan Pollard with the NBR's Dita DeBoni.
We can at least get the RSE numbers back up to what, more resembling what they were pre-lockdown. That will certainly go a long way towards helping. We've got a phenomenal number of programs underway trying to attract people into the industry. And it's certainly really grateful, actually, I have to say, for government agencies like MSD, like Corrections and others for helping us with that.
Alan Pollard, NZ Apple and Pears Chief Executive, with Dita DeBoni. Employers' ability to dismiss employees who are unwilling or unable to be vaccinated may be minimal, but even asking workers about their status or screening job seekers for jabs pose legal issues too. Asking employees or applicants whether they've been vaccinated or not could land an employer in hot water on privacy grounds, but it depends why you're asking, according to Alistair Espy, Senior Associate and Employment Law Specialist at law firm Duncan Cotterill. If the employer has genuinely assessed specific safety issues at the place of work and an employee or applicant refuses to answer the question, it could justifiably affect their prospects of employment, Espy said. But expecting an answer to that question without the basis of a health and safety imperative or just out of curiosity would be a no-no. He went on to say, likewise, don't advertise a job by saying there is or may be a vaccination requirement, and warned, even if you might be willing to make exceptions on a kind of case-by-case basis, if you make vaccination a prerequisite in your advertising, you're indicating potentially an intention to discriminate. So that can come with some risks. Those are our top stories as we head into the weekend, the full versions of which, along with all our breaking business news, columns and opinion, are at nbr.co.nz right now. You're watching NBR This Week, a brief look back now at the week's top stories from our daily video news program NBR Today. On Monday, MAINZEAL case heads to the top court. The long-running directors' duties lawsuit following the collapse of construction company MAINZEAL is heading to the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeal in March ruled MAINZEAL's four directors, Chief Executive Richard Yan, Chair and ex-Prime Minister Dame Jenny Shipley, Peter Goem and Clive Tilby, breached the Companies Act for reckless trading ahead of its collapse in 2013, owing creditors more than $111 million. But it also found the breach that formed the basis for the High Court's $36 million damages award in 2019 had in fact caused no loss, so no compensation was payable under Section 135 of the Act. Instead, Appeal Court Justices Stephen Koss, David Goddard and Forrie Miller overturned Justice Francis Cook's finding that the directors were not in breach of Section 136. It's NBR This Week, the week's top stories from our daily video business news bulletin NBR Today. From Tuesday, the National Party wants more help for businesses. The National Party is urging the government to look at longer-term support for struggling businesses. Its Shadow Treasurer, Andrew Bailey, said the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic was going to last longer than people might have initially thought, and he was expecting more lockdowns and ongoing restrictions, particularly for hospitality businesses. Andrew Bailey joined NBR political editor Brent Edwards.
The wage subsidy is fine. It's 80% of the wages. The business owner's still got to top up the 20%. And the government talks about the resurgent payment, but most people do not realise it is a one-off payment. If you've got 10 employees, it's worth $5,500. If it's 20 employees, you've got $9,500. To be honest, running a small business, that probably pays your insurance and your rates. It doesn't do anything towards your rent. And that's why I've called for a rent support package.
This is NBR This Week, the past week's top 5 business stories from NBR Today. From Wednesday, a statement by Pacific Edge to the NZX. Cancer diagnostics company Pacific Edge has issued a statement to the NZX appearing to deny it's raising capital despite detailed information released, apparently inadvertently, to the ASX. Shares in Pacific Edge were placed in trading halt on the NZX at 11:54 this morning, with the company saying it was preparing a response to an announcement regarding its ASX dual listing application and intended capital raise. Meanwhile, details of a capital raise were posted to the ASX saying Pacific Edge was raising Australian $70 million and New Zealand $120 a share through an offer closing on September 10th. Bell Potter, Jarden Australia and Forsyth Barr were named as advisors to the offer. One market source told NBR clearly something has gone astray. There's been an error. It's NBR This Week, the top business stories from our daily video news bulletin NBR Today. From Thursday, Rocket Lab results. Rocket Lab has reported revenue of US $29.5 million for the first half of 2021, an increase of 237% compared with the same period in 2020, but is suffering under New Zealand's COVID restrictions. In its first results briefing since it listed publicly on the US Nasdaq exchange under the ticker RKLB on August 25th, the New Zealand-founded space and launch systems company reported a net loss of US $32.5 million for the 6 months to the end of June, widening from US $23.5 million in the first half of 2020. Addressing the market on a call this morning, founder, chair and CEO Peter Beck and CFO Adam Spice said the company expected revenue of between $4 and $5 million US in the third quarter due to COVID restrictions in New Zealand and between US $17 and $20 million in Q4, assuming those restrictions ease prior to the end of September. This is NBR This Week. Now we're up to Friday's top story. Outspoken Auckland businessman Leo Molloy has colourfully ruled out a lease extension on NZX-listed Good Spirits Hospitality's O'Hagan's pub in Auckland's Viaduct Harbour. The future of the pub was subject to speculation following the resignation of the director representing Good Spirits' major shareholder late last week. A former investment banker, Andrew Christie, joined the board in December and resigned, effective immediately on Friday. Christie is a director of major investor Christie Whiting Vermont, CWV, which originally held an 18.6% stake. CWV, along with interests associated with Molloy, purchased an Auckland Viaduct property tenanted by Good Spirits O'Hagan's Irish Bar in November 2019. You've been watching our review of the week's top 5 NBR Today stories. You can find the full versions of those stories and more, along with all our daily breaking business news columns and opinion at nbr.co.nz right now. Saturday at NBR, Fact or Fiction, Brent Edwards and Grant Walker debate the week in politics, while on Monday, Shoeshine investigates too little action on delivery drivers. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks for watching NBR This Week. Have a great weekend. I look forward to being with you again from Monday at around 5:30 with another NBR Today.